Hey guys, Chad back here with another video to help you with your continuous improvement career. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about 3 key things that all Kaizen events must have. And to be honest, a lot of these do not have at least one of the tools I'm about to go over. And so I want to make sure you have these. So make sure you stick around. As always, if you like the content of this video, go ahead and click that subscribe button down below so you can get more videos like this. It will show up in your feed, especially if you click that bell icon, because then you'll be notified when I release a new video. Likewise, at any point during this video, if you click that thumbs up button, I'd sincerely appreciate it because it helps promote this video more, but only if you like the video. And the first key tool that most Kaizen events do not have is the Kaizen charter. I don't understand the reluctance in having a charter. The charter is like your contract, right? It's a contract of what you're going to be facilitating as a facilitator when you actually facilitate the event. And it's really like an agreement between you and the team leader. The contract is going to be there. The Kaizen charter is going to be there to help keep you and the team leader aligned and on track. I like to call it the North Star. Contract sounds so, I don't know, official. But when you say it's the North Star, it has more of a meaning in my mind of keeping us on the right track. And it's something that I always can pull back out if and when the team starts to veer off and go off track, which it does happen from time to time. So why do most Kaizen facilitators and leaders leave out the Kaizen charter? Well, I think it's because there's a lot of information in a charter that can be somewhat intimidating if you've never done one before. So for example, when you're trying to connect the problem you're trying to fix or solve with the Kaizen event, when you're trying to connect that to a business need, or you're trying to connect that to a customer need, which by the way, we should be doing both, right? Because when you're trying to solve a problem that the business is facing, you should be able to tie that back to a customer need or some key metric that does overall impact the customer. And we always talk about quality, cost, and delivery, right? Safety, of course, that should be in there as well. And that's sort of a no-brainer. That should always be sort of first on the list is safety. But quality, cost, and delivery, a lot of times we can tie these metrics back to a business need that we can also tie back to a customer need. Scope is another word that seems quite normal or quite easy to explain, but when you try to actually scope a project down to a specific thing, it can be really difficult. And when you're trying to do this yourself, it's difficult. But when you're trying to get a team to do it, or you're trying to get a team leader, you're trying to ask them the right questions to get them to understand what the scope of the actual Kaizen event is, it can be even tougher. It's tougher or more complicated. It can be more complicated. Now with the scope is, you ever heard of aim small, miss small? That means if you aim at a target, right, you might miss the target. But if you aim at the bullseye and you miss the bullseye, you still hit the target. Now, sort of the same thing with the scope here. Think about looking through a scope, right? A scope on a rifle, right? If you look down the scope and you look at the crosshairs, well, if you're aiming at 50 different targets in the field, and it's kind of hard to focus on one. But if you scope that in and you focus on one target, you're more likely to hit that target. And more so, back to the bullseye example, if you scope it in even more and you aim at the bullseye, maybe you don't hit the bullseye, but you definitely hit the target. And that's what the scope helps us do with the charter. And what's important here is that when you focus in on a metric with a Kaizen, what you should be doing, you should be focusing in on one key metric that you need to fix with this Kaizen, because you can't fix everything with a Kaizen. And I'll go into that in a moment. But when you focus in on one key metric, what this allows you to do is it focuses the team and gives you that North Star. Here's the crazy thing, all right? You don't always accomplish that metric. You don't always hit that metric, right? Same scenario with the bullseye. We don't always hit the bullseye or the metric. So let's say, for example, we wanted to increase our on-time delivery by 30% to our customers. If we get 25%, we didn't hit the bullseye, but I'd say we hit the target. 25%. Pretty good, right? If you get a 25% increase in your on-time delivery to your customers, I think your customers are going to be pretty happy, although we didn't hit the bullseye of the Kaizen. So don't beat yourself up too much if you don't always hit the bullseye, but make sure you scope your Kaizens properly and down enough that even if you miss the bullseye, you hit the target. Now, back to the example I was giving about trying to solve everything in one Kaizen event. This happens more often than you think. For example, I was working at a company once and I was brought in to coach an individual that was about to do a Kaizen. And this individual was telling me about 5 different things they were supposed to accomplish in this Kaizen event. And I said, my experience is that when you try to go in and solve everything, you don't really solve anything. And then you leave the Kaizen event with more actions than you went to the Kaizen event with. And that is not what Kaizen is about. And he said, well, my boss asked me to do this, right? So I have to do this. And I politely said, no, you don't want to do that. Make sure you scope it properly. I went through the same explanation. I just went about the bullseye explanation in some way, shape, or form. I'm sure I did. But I did say you don't want to try to do all of that. You got to only focus on one key metric. I said, so you need to use this opportunity to coach up to your boss, right? You can always coach up, do it politely, do it nicely, but say, give them the reasons why. And that's why I'm doing this video. In case you ever have to coach up, you can tell them about the bullseye scenario, tell them about the scope and the charter and the North Star. I asked this individual to do the same thing. Your boss may still say, I don't care, do it. Needless to say, this individual didn't do that. What I said was going to happen actually happened. They left the event. He saw me in the hallway a few days later and said, Chad, you're absolutely right. You know, we did the Kaizen event. We did get a couple of things accomplished. We didn't improve any metrics in the Kaizen event. And we left with more actions than we started with, but we have an action plan to move forward. I'm not saying it was a total fail. They have an action plan to move forward, but that's not the purpose of Kaizen. So make sure you have a charter and make sure you fill out the elements of the charter properly. I know it's intimidating, but you got to do it. And a shameless plug here, we go over all of that: charters, scopes, metrics, key metrics, everything that you need for a Kaizen event inside the Kaizen Expert Masterclass, a link in the description below. And tool number 2 that a lot of folks leave out when they're about to facilitate a Kaizen event is process mapping. Now, at some point during the Kaizen, you're going to need to understand how a process flows. Even if you do that as pre-work, right, before the Kaizen event, and I talk about that in other videos and certainly in the Kaizen Expert Masterclass, it doesn't mean that you always don't also do that in the Kaizen event. Here's the crazy thing about process flow maps or any process map in general. When you ask someone to tell you about a process, generally they can tell you about the process, right? Very good at explaining it, although they do kind of go off on tangents. And then you go, great, I understand kind of what you're saying. Do you mind drawing that out for me on the whiteboard? And it falls apart. Many people can explain it, at least they think they can explain it, but when they try to draw it out on a whiteboard, it falls apart, right? Unless you're skilled at this and you've done it before, it's really difficult to draw out a box with a step and an arrow to the next step and really think of it terms almost in programming: step 1, step 2, step 3, right? People want to go from step 1 to step 5 and they leave out a lot of steps. For example, if I said I got dressed in the morning for work, I would just say, hey, I put on my shirt, I put on my pants, I got dressed, got in my car and came to work. But there's a lot of other things that happen in the process, right? I didn't just put on my shirt and put on my pants. I actually put on my underwear, my belt, I brushed my teeth, I put on an undershirt, put on deodorant. There's a lot of things that happen in the process that we miss out. And unless you're really skilled at this and asking those types of questions, you kind of skip over it. But process maps are very important. And I'm going to go over a few process maps that I like the most. Number 1, you got to have a value stream map. You got to have the current state value stream map. This is good for any event you're going to do, whether it be root cause analysis. By the way, you get a root cause analysis masterclass inside the Kaizen event masterclass, included free with that. Shameless plug again, but there's so much offered in that course. But you got to have a value stream map no matter what. It helps identify waste, identify bottlenecks. It helps you see where inefficient processes are. It can help you identify cross-functional collaboration opportunities, and it helps you see end-to-end product quality. If you're looking at quality in the process, which most of the time we are, whether it be transactional or operational, we're going to look at quality, right? Quality of documents, quality of paperwork and ERPs, if we're thinking about transactional processes, but also physical products, right? Widgets that we make in operational. We always got to be looking at quality. And it goes back to quality, cost, and delivery, right? We got to always be looking at cost. We always be looking at quality of the product or the service we deliver, and then also delivery, on-time delivery to the customer. Now, I want you to think about your VSM as a 30,000-foot view, not a 30-foot view, 30,000-foot view. We'll get into the 30-foot view in just a moment. A VSM is really a high-level overview of the process. And I like to think of not process steps with the VSM, but process buckets. Let's use an example of making lemonade. And stick with me through this. I know it might seem simple, but we're going to use this example through the rest of the process maps that I like, so it'll kind of flow. Anyway, value stream maps, lemonade. Let's look at this. So if you think about a value stream map in the buckets I just mentioned, you can see we have cut lemons, squeeze lemons, remove seeds, add water to lemon juice, then you add some sugar, and then you mix the sugar. So this is your value stream map buckets. Now, I know we can do enterprise-wide value stream maps and all that jazz, but I just want you to kind of get the overview of what I'm trying to say here. Or I want you to see what I'm trying to say, demonstrating this. And this is a value stream map at a very high level, no cycle times, no inventory, none of that jazz. But these are the buckets. If we wanted, we can go back in and add in like the inventory, if we had inventory, the cycle time for each process step, the operators for each process step. I don't want to do all that, not in this video. I just wanted you to kind of see the overview a lot of what a VSM is. And another one of my favorite process maps to use, and I did go into some detail in another video where I actually go through and show you how to do this, and I'll put a link in the description below where you can access that video right here on YouTube on this channel, is the swim lane process map, right? I love the swim lane process map, and I'm going to show you a little bit about that using the same example the lemon example in just a minute. But first, let's go over a few benefits of the swim lane process map. One, it clarifies complex processes. It can improve, or at least show you where you can improve on communication and understanding between departments, right? Because a lot of times when we have departments, if you have finance and accounting and operations, and legal, maybe even sales, research and development, a lot of times when you're in these swim lanes, we call these silos, right? Because we act like we're in silos and we don't communicate across swim lanes. R&D might not talk to sales. Sales might not talk to manufacturing. This happens all the time, right? And so what ends up happening is these swim lanes become like silos. But if we were to take these swim lanes, flesh them out, and show each process step in the swim lane and how it all fits together and how we all should be working as a team, a lot of times it breaks down those communication barriers and allows us to communicate across those swim lanes or across those silos. It also shows swim lane responsibility, right? Because you might have a department at the very end of the swim lane. I'll show this in a minute. And then the swim lane has each step in the swim lane, and you can start analyzing who and where the responsibilities lie inside that swim lane, inside the entire process. And you can also use that when you're putting together something called a RACI, which is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. And basically it's just a matrix that shows all of those things and who's responsible for what. And you can use the swim lane process map to reverse engineer a value stream map using the times associated with each process step in the swim lane. Now, where we talked about the value stream map was your 30,000 foot view, your swim lane process map is a 30-foot view. Now let's look at what that might look like using our lemonade example. So remember before during our VSM, we had cut lemons, squeeze lemons, remove seeds, add water to lemon juice, add sugar and mix sugar. Let's use that for our swim lane map. It might look like this. You still have those buckets, right? Except now we have swim lanes, whereas you have lemons, get lemons, cut lemons, squeeze lemons into bowl, remove seeds. This might be operator 1, right? Operator 1 is our person that handles the lemons. Operator 2 might do mixing. So it goes from remove seeds to get bowl, pour lemon juice into bowl, get water, add sugar, pour water into lemon juice bowl, get sugar, add sugar to lemon juice, mix water and lemon juice, and then finally it gets down to the third swim lane, which is serve, right? We have a server, operator 3 maybe. Get glass, add ice to glass, pour lemon juice in glass, add umbrella if you want to make it fancy, and then serve the lemon juice. Now, where I talked about before, where you could reverse engineer back into your value stream map, if you were to go in and add cycle times to each one of these process steps, you could then add those up. Right? Add those cycle times up and you can see how long the operator takes to cut lemons, or how long operator 1, who is the person that handles all the lemons, how long they have in their process swim lane. You can do the same thing for mixing and serving, and then you can start using that to back into your value stream map. Listen, I get it. We could have probably fleshed this out even more and had a bunch of detailed process steps, but I think you get the picture and the difference really between what a value stream map is, 30,000 foot view, and a process map or swim lane process map is 30-foot view. The last process map I like to use isn't as widely known or as widely used, and I'm stretching a little bit here when I call it a process map. It's called a SIPOC, and a SIPOC stands for supplier, input, process, output, and customer. Now I'm going to show you a little bit about what that can do, but first, let's talk about the benefits of a SIPOC. A SIPOC can increase transparency across an organization. It can provide an overview of a project for stakeholders. It can be used as a training tool for new employees, which is great. It can help with problem-solving activities. It can create a template that can be reused for various processes and projects, and it ensures all team members are on the same page. I love the SIPOC, although a lot of folks don't like it because it is kind of complicated when you first start using them. So I'm going to show you how to use a SIPOC now. And of course, we're going to be using the lemon exercise. So we're going to go right here down to inputs and outputs. So first of all, what we have in the blue section, in the blue section, we have the outputs. In the orange section, we have the inputs. And right here at the top, we have SIPOC, right? You can see I have SIPOC, supplier, input, process, output, customer. And with a SIPOC, you always start right here in the middle with the P process, making lemon juice. Because if we didn't start with that, we wouldn't know what we're doing, right? So we have to start with the process. We're making lemon juice. That's our process. So that's number 1. Number 2 is our output. Well, what is the output of making lemon juice? Well, the output of making lemon juice should be lemon juice that's slightly sweetened, chilled with an umbrella. Why do I say it should be? Because this should contain the voice of the customer. That's what I have to hear. Understand VOC, voice of the customer. And it should be this because our customer wants that. How do I know that? Because in this scenario, I'm the customer, right? I'm saying I'm the customer and I want some lemon juice that's slightly sweetened, chilled with an umbrella. And so that's number 2. Number 3 is the customer. And that's why I have 3 there. And now this is where it gets a little funny for people. Then we go all the way back to step 4, which is inputs to the process. So the inputs to the process, but we got to follow the chain here. We're going to from input to process. So for making lemon juice, what are the inputs to making lemon juice? Well, we need water, lemons, sugar, glass, ice. We need a bowl. We need a knife. You know, these are all the things we're going to use to make that lemon juice, right? And then finally, we get to step 5, which is the supplier. Great. Who is the supplier of all these inputs, right? And the supplier could be, brands of the sugar. Why do I have cabinet? That doesn't make sense. The brand of the sugar, I don't know why I said that. The supplier could be grocery store for lemons. Anyway, you get the idea. So you have the supplier for all of these inputs. And what this allows us to do is it gives us a very big picture of the process we're doing, the voice of the customer, what they want, so we can make sure we deliver that. The inputs, the inputs that we need to make the right thing for the customer, and then also the supplier of those things. And the great thing about the SIPOC is that think about it, right? We went from the value stream map, and I mentioned you could have the supplier, the customer, the enterprise, the ERP system. You can use the SIPOC to build out the value stream map if you want it, right? Because we have all that information right there. The great thing about SIPOCs, like most value stream maps, is that you can have it very broad in scope or very narrow in scope. And tool number 3, finally, right? Tool number 3 is the agenda, a daily agenda. Most facilitators don't even have a daily agenda. They just go in and kind of wing it. I've seen it. I don't understand it. I can't do it. I can't operate that way. So make sure you have a daily agenda. And I always like to start my daily agenda with the very end in mind. In other words, if I know what metric I want to accomplish or what I want to accomplish by the end of the week, if you do a week-long Kaizen, which most of these are, most of the ones I lead are a week long, then I always start with what do I want on Thursday or Friday, right? What number do I want to hit? What metric? What do I need to be successful at the end of the week? And I know what I need to hit to be successful at the end of the week because I have the charter. And then I reverse my days. So if Friday I know I need to hit a certain metric, what do I need on Thursday to hit that metric? What do I need on Wednesday to hit that metric? What do I need on Tuesday to hit that metric? So I always have not just a daily agenda at the top, like here are the things we need to cover. Of course, you got to do your process maps, you got to do your impact effort matrix, all those things that you need in a Kaizen event, right? But then at the very bottom, I'll have, okay, but at the end of the day, I need to make sure these 1, 2, or 3 things are accomplished to make sure I hit my goal at the end of the week. So I always reverse engineer it. Start with where I want to be at the end of the week and reverse engineer it back down. I make sure I set these daily objectives, and then I go over it every single day with the team leader. Once we end the day, the team lead, the group goes back to their daily jobs, or they leave for the day, or whatever it is, depending on how long the event is. I hold back the team leader and maybe one other leader in the business or in the Kaizen event, and I say, okay, here's what we got done today. Here's the objective we set for that day. Did we accomplish that? And if we say yes, great, then we start the next day with the agenda. If we say no, then we got to regroup and replan on what we're going to do to make sure we hit that first thing in the next morning to accomplish it before we move on with the rest of the day. Because remember, it's critical. Time is of an essence when you're in a Kaizen. And so if you don't manage your Kaizens this way, it's going to be really difficult to accomplish your overall goal at the end of the week. So make sure you are meeting with your team leader. You are making sure that you're on track every day at the end of the day. And then if you are, high five, great, move on. But if you're not, then the next morning, you better have a plan to get back on track. So a quick recap, make sure you have a charter with a solid scope and a metric, a key metric that you want to hit. Make sure you use process mapping, right? Whether it be value stream maps, swim lanes, or SIPOCs. Make sure you have those in your event. And number 3, make sure that you have a solid agenda. Guys, if you do this, I promise you're going to have an awesome Kaizen event. But if you want to know more and you want to learn how to become a Kaizen expert, I want to invite you to go over and check out my website, Learn Kaizen. Link's in the description below, and you can just head over there and check it out. Otherwise, make sure you give me a thumbs up on this video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next video.